listening to Contesting Wrestling episode Minisode 16, in which we talk, much to my chagrin, again about John Cena, because this is the pattern we've locked ourselves into.
Yes.
He is America.
He is America. That is true, and we're all very tired of America.
You were talking about how, like, you know, he has this thing where he's both the underdog and you always know he's gonna win, which is kind of like Hulk Hogan. And that's, I think South Park made this point about America. Like, we can always have it both ways.
Oh yeah.
Like, you know,
that was definitely South Park.
That's-
We'll do a horrible thing, and then we'll protest it.
right.
That's also in Umberto Eco's famous piece on fascism, on the essential core of fascism. He says one of the traits that fascists always have is the enemies of fascism, people that fascism vilifies, are always simultaneously weak and strong.
Yeah.
You know, you're always like
the Iron Curtain is going to take over, and yet it is, you know, inferior to us.
Yeah. All those guys, you know, on the left are like weak beta males, and also they're going to come and kill our entire family. Like
the Mexicans simultaneously are going to suck up public resources and not work and take all of the jobs.
Exactly. We're good at that.
That's John Cena.
Yeah,
that's John Cena.
That's John Cena all the way.
He takes all
Poor
of the
John
jobs.
Cena. He doesn't do any jobs.
He's done a fair amount of jobs over the years. He did, you know. Well, a mark of a really great top guy is that you can still do jobs, and it doesn't do anything bad for you. The Rock could do that. The Rock lost to everybody all the time, and nobody noticed.
Along those lines, Doc, you were saying at some point, you know, historically, people haven't voted for villains who have presented themselves as villains.
In general, yes.
Why are we now voting for villains so often?
You know, I look at just the arc of pop culture really over the last, like, since like postmodernism in the 80s or whatever. And it's gone from, you know, very colorful, almost childlike babyface kind of stuff everywhere through to like the shades of gray of alternative, to the darker exploration of the human psyche then that came in the early 2000s and so on. And eventually that led us to just liking the villain, you know, like, and I'm not just talking about wrestling. Like, look at how big like Dr. House was, or Breaking Bad was great because we love the villain. We love playing Grand Theft Auto, or we're
Joker,
the villains, Joker, and so on. So we're much more fascinated with the villains. And there's many reasons for this. At this point, if anybody ever tries to present as the good guy, we immediately find the flaws in them so badly we don't want to follow them. But we can see all the flaws in the villain and we love them.
I am hoping that 2020 winds up being sort of an inversion of the 1980 election, because in 1980, Jimmy Carter ran on a message of like, look, like we're facing some really difficult times economically, in terms of foreign policy. Like, we're going to have to really think about what kind of future we're going to build because we've had all these issues. And Ronald Reagan was like, it's fucking morning in America.
Right.
And everybody was like, yes, that guy, please. And then not say there weren't issues with Carter, but and that's I feel like, you know, for a long time we like villains because villains are more honest, right? They're just like, I'm a villain. This is what I want to do. I want to do villainous things, and we appreciate that they're being honest and straightforward with us, because we don't trust when the good guys say that, oh, I'm a good guy, I want to do good things. We're like, well, we don't buy that anymore. Right. That's on a recent episode, you know, I was talking about how watching new Star Trek shows, I haven't seen Picard yet, I'm just talking mostly about Discovery, but also like it's kind of got this weird dissonance where Star Trek was really predicated on this idea that we could, as a society, imagine and buy the idea of a utopia, and that's just not something we can do anymore. That's not something we view, even in our fantastical fictitious stories. We're like, well, yeah, but like we're not going to have a perfect society. Like,
what's kind of interesting about Cena in this context, and you were talking about how like it's weird because his character is sort of that he is inauthentic.
Yes,
you know, everything he does is marketable. He's a giant billboard. We don't believe him as a real good guy, and yet because he refused to turn heel, despite half the crowd booing him,
Yeah.
despite so many people calling for him to turn heel. That gave him a sort of authenticity. That gave him a sort of integrity, a weird, new, postmodern kind of integrity.
Well, he was what he presented, and that's all that he was.
And this is splitting hairs kind of, but he's inauthentic, but he was also consistent.
Yeah.
Right,
And
exactly.
he was also
Hustle, loyalty, and respect.
and he was true to himself in his inauthenticity.
Right.
Yeah.
Where it was just especially after a while, it's just I've been John Cena for so long in an unbroken chain, and that people were just well, even though I have issues with the internal contradictions of the character of John Cena, taken as a whole, I know exactly what I'm getting. I know exactly what he's doing. And he shows up, he does the job. He's really good at, at all of the things that you need to be good at in professional wrestling.
How many years can you criticize the thing you criticized about it at first when it has solidified so much more?
Especially when you're still watching it the whole time.
Yeah, right. A few months ago, on SmackDown, The Miz had a great line where, somebody was, dismissing him as a guy who came from Hollywood and reality television. He said, I've been in the WWE for 15 years. How long do I have to be a professional wrestler before that's what you think of me of first? And he's right.
One thing that's kind of inconsistent about Cena, we mentioned the Saudi Arabia shows, and we weren't sure which ones he had done and which ones he hadn't done. He did do the first one.
The first one.
The greatest Royal Rumble.
Right, the greatest. I thought he did the first one. He had a slow match with Triple H or something.
I don't know. I don't remember. But he did the first one. What I do know about it is that he came out and gave a long speech about how much he appreciated being invited there and how much respect he had for the country and all the fucking propaganda bullshit, right?
Right.
And then he refused to do any of the other ones.
Yeah.
Why? Because he started to become a star in Hollywood, and his crowd is not down with that shit at all.
Yeah.
No, also nobody's down with that. That, I feel one of the most bipartisan things in that we have.
Even the Republicans were when the
The Khashoggi killing.
exactly. I wasn't going to try to pronounce his name myself because I hadn't mastered that myself. Khashoggi. Yes.
That's the Anglicization.
That's
of it.
yeah.
We
that's
are
why I wasn't gonna-
anglicized. Yes.
I did take Arabic for a semester and a half. But
You want to give it a shot?
No.
Okay. So when that was happening, even the Republicans were begging Vince McMahon to back out of his Saudi deal, and he didn't.
Well, that's it's just and maybe bipartisan is the wrong word because politically, actually, the people are Congress is very much on the side of Saudi Arabia, but everybody else in the country is not.
Yeah.
Nobody thinks that it's good that we have such deep economic and military ties with them.
I think you're ignoring that a giant block of people don't care.
Well, yes, that is. But I would say I bet even the most broadly apolitical people who don't really give a shit, I bet if you ask them, how do you feel about Saudi Arabia? And maybe a lot of times you'll just, they won't like them for racist reasons, which isn't good. But I feel even people who really don't pay attention are going to have a generally negative feeling about them.
I think most WWE fans do not like this Saudi stuff.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
It takes away from the whole rest of the product.
Yeah.
They promote the Saudi shows and they give a lot of TV time to developing them.
They're getting so much money from this deal.
Because it's also it's not they're fucking setting up. I will admit I don't know this. I'm making some assumptions right here. You can tell me if I'm right or not. But it's not they're setting up, in a major city in Saudi Arabia and then just the regular old people who live there get to go. I am sure that, they are being invited by MBS, and it is probably you got to know somebody.
No.
Know somebody to get it.
They're doing,
Is it for the?
They're
They
doing
sell tickets.
gigantic stadiums, so you can see in the front rows the Arabian aristocracy that are there. But then there's 50,000 people from the area, and especially these are pure propaganda shows. The way the tickets go is that if you buy a ticket, You also have to bring either like your wife or your mother or your daughter so that we can show everybody that we have all of the women here at our entertainment events, to show people how
That's at
progressive
least
towards
some of the
women that they
tickets.
are.
Some of the tickets are reserved for like.
Certainly the ones in front of the camera.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, those are the tickets. But they do put tickets on sale to the general public for that.
And
Because
I think
they want
the
to
first
show.
ones did really well.
Yeah.
And then there were diminishing
And
sales
it's
after
not
that.
like the giant super show that WCW and New Japan put on in North Korea, where attendance was mandatory. It's not like that.
And hence was the most well-attended wrestling show in history.
Yes. It's there are several sinister things about the show, but it's not like that.
Also, and like, I mean, North Korea's not great. You don't really want to be supporting them,
No.
but like, in terms of like what is a dark force in this world, like, North Korea's got the I think they've got the GDP of like Birmingham, Alabama, or something
they have
like
a lot
that.
of bluster, but if they ever like really got to do anything, immediately South Korea and Japan and like even China, who's like North Korea's ally, I think it's pretty much on the condition of don't actually attack anybody who we don't really want a land
But
war
like-
anywhere. Like,
And I just you can tie like Saudi royal oil money to both like ISIS and Uber. Like it's just the whole spectrum of what's terrible about the planet Earth in 2020 can be linked back to Saudi oil money. It's good stuff. John Cena.
But wait, talking a little bit more about WWE's financial situation in general, I was looking at the reports, the Q4 reports.
yeah,
House show attendance down,
Yep.
TV ratings down, network subscribers down. They made the most money they've ever made.
revenue up.
Revenue up, mostly because of the Fox deal.
Right,
Fox
that's-
paid them a shit ton of money for a show with dropping ratings.
Well, for television content, which is more and more.
Are they on Fox now?
They're on
SmackDown-
Network Fox.
SmackDown is live every Friday night on Fox.
Wow.
Fox, right? And it's the biggest TV deal they'd ever signed. The metrics are always so hard to really parse with WWE because the significant ones change from decade to decade. At one point, the biggest part of the bottom line was clearly live events. Now it's like they're waning, they're running fewer of them, and it doesn't really hurt them. It doesn't hurt their bottom line anyway. Then it was like pay-per-view buys, but they cannibalized pay-per-view buys for the network. And it was a risky move, and 5 years on, they were way ahead of the curve. They were like, no, over-the-top style network where everything's just on a subscription service. And it's been a big success for them. Not as big as they said it was going to be. And yeah, subscribers are down like 10%. They'll probably go back up this quarter because WrestleMania is in this quarter. That happens every year. But still, it's like the bloom is kind of off the rose with the WWE network. But right, they made so much more money just delivering more television content. And of course, the Saudi deal brings them millions of dollars. So
It's just like such a microcosm of what's wrong with American capitalism, where
yes,
people can make tons of money delivering a worse product that people
to
dislike.
fewer people.
Well, and then the answer is always going to be like, well, what? I mean, what was I supposed to do? Obviously,
Right, exactly.
my responsibility is to maximize my profits, and I shouldn't really have to consider other things. And
yeah.
Obviously we'll help Saudi Arabia whitewash their image in exchange for hundreds of millions of dollars, because it would be irresponsible to our shareholders if we didn't do that.
So, like a few days ago, they fired a couple of top corporate executives. A guy named George Barrios and Michelle Wilson, two people who had been executive vice presidents, like for real, not TV characters, like real executive vice presidents for 10 years or more.
George Barrios, Barrios had been there for a long time.
And we still don't really know why. They were like, oh, are the Q4 numbers bad and they want to fire people? Well, the Q4 numbers were fine. The revenue was fine and all that. The stock price tanked about 10 points, and it went back up about 5 points when the report came out. Like, oh, no, I guess they're okay. And like, who knows? Maybe they see like, all right, if we keep doing this, eventually everything's going to collapse. We need to shake things up on a corporate level, even because TV ratings do keep going down, and they can only go down so far before the networks start like shelving them. Literally from the peak of Raw, a third to a quarter of the people watch Raw than they used to.
So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. We were talking about overruns, and Evan had asked, what do people tune in because they want to watch Burn Notice or whatever afterwards? I think it's more that people just finish watching whatever show that they're watching and just start flipping channels for something else. And WWE's hoping to catch them in that 5 to 10 minutes when they haven't decided what they're going to watch.
Are people still doing that?
Well, they don't have the overruns anymore.
Yeah.
Fairly recently, like a year ago or so, USA was finally like, no more overruns. The show is until 11 because the overrun was getting longer. First, it was like 4 or 5 minutes, and then it had gotten to be sometimes 15 minutes.
Whoa,
After watching 3 hours of Monday Night Raw, they're still going. So the overrun started during the Monday Night War. Nitro started doing it, and they starting the show earlier. They were like, we both start at 8. Can we start at 7:58? And so then they'd start at 7:58, and people would already be watching Nitro. And just dirty tricks like that are unnecessary these days.
Another reason for the overrun is if you want to create the illusion that it's, not predetermined.
Yep.
And you also want it to be so that you don't have to end in the middle of a match, which they did for a while back in the day.
Yeah.
You're going to have to let it go over so you can finish that last match or segment or whatever is going on.
Tricky.
Yeah. A point I wanted to make about the Great Khali, he actually got in trouble because we mentioned that he was actually a Punjabi prison guard. He didn't tell them that he was leaving to go become a wrestler in America. So when he got back, they were upset with him for abandoning his post.
I mean, yeah, you shouldn't do give notice. Give you 2 weeks. Especially they're expecting you to show up
as a prison guard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I bet you not a lot of people have ever told Khali you can't do that.
Yeah.
To anything.
I knew a guy who was when I was working at a popular supermarket chain. I knew a guy who was like, oh man, I found this job, I have a buddy of mine does this, and it's like training to become a prison guard, and then you can make a bunch of money. And I was like, you seem like a nice guy, man. I can't, you would make a terrible prison guard. And he was like, oh, that's not very supportive. And I'm like, that's a good thing. If you would make a bad prison guard, because you're a good person. Good people are not good at guarding prisoners in American jails.
I feel
you want a measure of I don't know. Sorry,
I feel like the Stanford prison experiment showed that pretty much anybody can be made into a good prison guard.
But hasn't that been completely debunked?
Yeah. Well, not completely debunked, but
no, because he fucked up the data. Because he at least everybody who's participated it came out and said oh, it was really really clear what they wanted. It was implied to them heavily what results everyone was going for. There's all kinds of. We'll do some more research and come back at the next minisode. But I'm pretty sure that everything that the Stanford prison experiment supposedly proved or implied has been just the experiment itself was completely flawed. None of that data is trustworthy.
The vast majority of social psychological research has been called into question over the last few years.
Yes.
It's a crisis in the discipline, actually. But yeah, sure. I was more getting at you with it as a joke there. But
sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry.
I mean, it wasn't that. I guess it's not that good of a joke.
Intellectualism is not a joke, Ben.
Das Experiment is still a fucking hell of a film.
Oh, no, I don't think I ever saw
the
it.
dramatization of
Yeah.
the Stanford prison experiment.
I was trying to think of where I listened to one of the best podcasts you could ever listen to is You Are Not So Smart. We talk about cognitive biases and things like that, and it's really cool. And they do a bunch of debunking episodes. They talked about that. So
we were talking about Brock Lesnar's comedic acting during that match with John Cena.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to mention when he jumps off the stairs and completely flops out of the ring.
Yeah.
He reacts brilliantly. He just cracks up. He cackles to himself like that was amazing that I did that, and then goes for it again. John Cena recently came out and said that he believes Brock Lesnar is the greatest WWE superstar of all time.
Yeah,
Wow.
he thinks that he's the best overall about doing, what we do. And, that's Cena's opinion. He's entitled to it. He's been in the ring with Brock several times.
I mean, Brock is certainly a unique force
Yeah.
and has also been around for a very long time.
It's the kind of thing that people don't want to put him on lists like that because he's such an effective heel still. But really, every time he's ever been there, he's been on top. He's been on top everywhere he's gone, almost the entire time he's been around, because you can't do anything else with him. He's clearly this crazy destroyer that's either going to be the champion or a constant threat to the champion. I've said before he's starting to get like the Andre the Giant kind of aura about him, which they're encouraging, and it's working. He's more evil than Andre the Giant.
Have they ever done storylines where they mix up the manager, like they get Heyman out of there and swap in, like because him and Heyman are a great combo. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I just mean in terms of like a way to keep his story interesting.
When he first turned heel in the WWE in like 2002, they put Heyman with him, and it was great. Before that, he had nobody. When he came back and faced John Cena there after his MMA career, they had him with nobody also, and they had him do like a couple of long WWE promos on Monday Night Raw. And as legend has it, they had him do like a 15-minute promo to start Raw like the top heel does. It was bad, and it tanked, and he walked to the back. He said he took one step through the curtain, looked at Vince McMahon, who's producing the show himself, and said, "Get me Paul Heyman now." They got him Paul Heyman, and he's been with him ever since.
There was also that short period of time where Heyman turned on him in favor of first the Big Show and then Kurt Angle. We were there for that. I was there for that.
No, I was there for that
too.
too. Survivor Series 02.
How was Lesnar's MMA career?
It was very successful.
He was the champ.
He didn't have that many fights as far as that goes, but they programmed him on top immediately within he lost his first fight. If you looked at the two guys after the fight, you would guess the other guy lost the fight.
It was a Pyrrhic victory.
He managed to grab him and tap him out.
Yeah, he snaked himself around Lesnar and pulled his arm behind him, and you could see Lesnar be like, he got me, because he did. But within 3 fights, he had won the UFC Heavyweight Championship. He defended it a couple of times. He had a couple of gaps in his MMA career because he needed surgery for diverticulitis.
Yeah.
They took a bunch of his intestine out.
So he had to give up the title because of his diverticulitis. And then eventually he came back to reclaim it, and that's when Cain Velasquez beat him.
Yeah, he won it back, and Cain Velasquez decisively beat him, and it was the first time anyone really decisively beat him. And he only had another fight or two after that.
I guess it is weirdly comforting to know that, yes, Brock also can for real kick your ass.
So-
It's not just an incredibly elaborate character.
An interesting pro wrestling like note about Brock Lesnar's MMA career. So you have the standard 4-ounce gloves, is it? 3-ounce gloves? I'm not much of an MMA fan, but there's a standard weight for the gloves. And the company that makes most of them went up to 3XL, and they had to custom make 4XL MMA gloves for Brock's gigantic destroyer hands. Because the 3XL just wouldn't fit.
Meaty hands, Brock.
Yeah.
So one of his more recent fights, I think his last one or his second to last one, the one against Mark Hunt, was that his last one?
I think that was his last one.
It turned out that he was juicing.
Yeah.
Oh, Brock was?
Right,
That Brock,
he was.
he somehow didn't get tested until after the fight.
Well,
or,
they test
he
you after
somehow-
the fight. They test you directly after the fight.
So yeah, he was totally on steroids or something.
A big
illegal.
complaint with the fighters is that they spend all that time cutting weight, and then they rehydrate, and then they fight, and then it's like, you win. It's like, you going to celebrate? It's like, no, give me some water. I have to pee within the next 2 hours or I'm disqualified. Over the years, the UFC has they've really have overly restrictive testing policies. A lot of people have complained about it, and it ends up they don't catch everybody,
Mark
but they
Hunt
have a lot of
complained about it.
what?
Mark Hunt complained about the fight.
They have false positives a lot of the time where the fighters will much later kind of clear their names after, and the first suspension is 2 years. now.
Damn.
I mean, they're hardcore about it, but there you go.
Alrighty. Do we have anything else?
Well, I'd like to properly plug our Patreon.
Yes.
That's patreon.com/contesting wrestling. We do a whole other episode, a full episode every week. By now we have 16 of them up, 15 or 16 of them up.
Yeah,
Well, we-
16 or up.
We have a growing archive. We do episodes that generally complement our regular episodes. We go more in depth on a wider variety of wrestling. It's a little looser, but we spend just as much time and effort putting that out there. We appreciate everybody that signs up for our Patreon. You're really helping us put it together. It's very encouraging that people have. So check us out. If you like the show and you want more of it, do so. We have plans for the future, and they will remain plans until we record them. But there you go. Once again, patreon.com/contesting wrestling. For $5 a month, you get a lot more content.
Follow us on Twitter at contestingw, and just tweet at us for any reason.
Yeah, put us in your mentions. Algorithm. Good.
Yes.
Acronym bad.
Yeah, very bad. Don't name your company that. For whatever, it just sounds bad. Also, don't name your company Shadow.
If you were gonna name it acronym, at least make that an acronym for something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like a meta acronym. That would be clever, but I don't think they did that.
Yeah.
And they're also just bad.
Yeah,
in
we're
general.
recording this in April of 2027, and the Iowa results have still not come in, even though the water wars are in full swing. So, from the future, goodbye.
Good night to democracy.